Welcome to Friends and Fiction. 4 New York Times bestselling authors, endless stories. Novelists Mary Kay Andrews, Kristin Harmel, Kristy Woodson Harvey, and Patti Callahan Henry are 4 longtime friends with more than 70 published books between them. Together, they host Friends and Fiction, with author interviews and fascinating insider talk about publishing and writing, to highlight and support independent bookstores. They discuss the books they've written, the books they're reading now, and the art of storytelling. If you love books and you're curious about the writing world, you're in the right place.
Hello, everyone. Welcome to the Friends and Fiction Show. I'm Kristy Woodson Harvey.
I'm Mary Kay Andrews.
And this is Friends and Fiction, 4 New York Times bestselling authors, endless stories to support indie bookstores, authors, and librarians. If you're not with us already, we hope you'll join our Facebook group, which is more than 250,000 members strong. We'd also like to invite you to follow us on Instagram and YouTube and to subscribe to our Substack newsletter, which is full of awesome bonus content. You can find out more about our community and all we have to offer, we offer a lot, at friendsandfiction.com.
And I'm here to remind you about the Friends and Fiction 2025 book subscription box, available only through our friends at Oxford Exchange. For one all-in price, you'll get 3 separate shipments in 2025. In March, you'll get Patti's new book. In May, Kristy's. Everybody loves an audio visual.
Look, I don't have Patti sitting here because I read it so long ago, but I have Kristin's coming out in June, too.
Right, and in June, you'll get Kristin's. All of them signed, all of them hardcover first editions. Plus, you'll get exclusive gifts, a Friends and Fiction friendship bracelet and car magnet that are available only in this bundle. So visit Oxford Exchange now to get yours. You can link to that from our website, too, at friendsandfiction.com.
On this episode, we are thrilled to welcome Lisa Genova to discuss her new novel, More or Less Maddie, which just came out on January 14th. And we are so excited to speak to Lisa about it. So let me tell you a little about our guest. Acclaimed as the Oliver Sacks of fiction and the Michael Crichton of brain science. It's pretty good. Lisa has captured a special place in contemporary fiction, writing stories that are equally inspired by neurological conditions and our shared human condition. She is the New York Times bestselling author of the novels Still Alice, Left Neglected, Love Anthony, and Inside the O'Briens.
Still Alice spent 59 weeks on the New York Times bestseller list and has been translated into 37 languages. It was adapted into a film starring Julianne Moore, Alec Baldwin, Kristen Stewart, Kate Bosworth, and Hunter Parrish. Julianne Moore won the 2015 Best Actress Oscar for her role as Alice Howland. Film adaptations for Inside the O'Briens, Every Note Played, and Left Neglected are in development. Now, Lisa's first work of nonfiction, Remember, The Science of Memory and the Art of Forgetting, published in March 2021 and was an instant New York Times bestseller. Is that me again, Kristy?
It's you again. She has so much to say
I
just kept you going. She has so many
much stuff in her bio. In 2015, Lisa was named on the U.S. Top 50 Influencers in Aging by Next Avenue. Her first TED Talk, What You Can Do to Prevent Alzheimer's, has been viewed over 8 million times, and obviously that's one I need to watch. Her most recent TED Talk, How Memory Works and Why Forgetting is Totally Okay, was the 6th most watched TED Talk of 2021. I swear to God, I have not been day drinking. A sought-after speaker, edutainer. That's the word in the script, Kristy.
Yeah, that's right. Edutainer. I like that. Good
Lisa
one.
has headlined in speaker series alongside Barack Obama, Joe Biden, Gloria Steinem, Jay Leno, Malala, Brian Stevenson, and Goldie Hawn. She received the Pell Center Prize for Story in the Public Square for distinguished storytelling that has enriched the public dialogue. The Sargent and Eunice Shriver Profiles and Dignity Award. The Global Genes Rare, R-A-R-E, Champions of Hope Award. And the American College of Neuropsychopharmacology
That's a good
Media Award. Why do I have to say that word?
At least Patti didn't have to say it this time.
That
Last week we had all the hard ones.
Neuropsychopharmacology Media Award for informing the public about treatment and ongoing research in mental illness. She has received an honorary doctorate of humane letters from Bates College, the Alzheimer's Association Rita Hayworth Award, the Huntington's Disease Society of America Community Awareness Award, and the Grubby Award for Literary Excellence.
Woo! Lisa graduated valedictorian summa cum laude from Bates College with a degree in biopsychology and has a PhD in neuroscience from Harvard. Her new novel, More or Less Maddie, was just released on January 14th, and it is the breathless, riveting story of a young woman diagnosed with bipolar disorder who rejects the stability and approval found in a traditionally normal life for a career in stand-up comedy. Chip, can you bring Lisa on?
Yay.
Hi, welcome.
Hello.
You.
I want to know if Lisa, I want to know if you can say that word.
You are hilarious. I'm like dying laughing listening to you struggle through that. Oh, sorry about that.
No, it's awesome. So tell us, you're on the road right now. Tell us where you are on your book tour.
Where am I?
What day is it? Where are you?
I am in a hotel. I just got here. I'm in St. Louis. I was in Chicago this morning and last night. And then where was I before that? I'm not sure.
Are you going to Novel Neighbor tonight? Tomorrow?
I'm going to the library tonight.
The library tonight. Okay.
That's a great library.
It's a great library. We were just I actually launched my last book in St. Louis with all the Friends and Fiction ladies. We had such a big time.
Yeah, that's what I'm doing. Okay. Great.
Well, we are so glad to have you, and thank you for joining us from the road. We know how stressful that can be. But wow, this book, I told you backstage, I sometimes hesitate to say this because I'm like, I love it when I've spent a year writing something. People are like, I read it in an hour, and I'm like, great. But I really read this book in 2 sittings. I mean, I just read and read and read and read. So as I just described, More or Less Maddie takes us inside the head of a young woman experiencing bipolar disorder. So we have to know, when was the moment that you decided, this is the next book? Like, what was the spark of the idea for you?
Yeah, it wasn't really, I don't remember an exact specific moment, but I do remember some moments that sort of confirmed and gave me confidence that this was the right topic that I should go after next. So I write about anyone who's ignored, feared, or misunderstood for what's going on inside their brains, because my background's in neuroscience, and that's sort of like my special angle on fiction. And I write fiction rather than nonfiction texts about these various things, other than the one memory book, just to help everybody out to understand how their memory works and why they forget things so they can calm down. I write stories because they're accessible to everyone, and it really is just such a magical way to create empathy and understanding of folks that you might not bother to understand otherwise, that you might have a lot of judgment or fear around. So I had written about neurodegenerative diseases like Alzheimer's, ALS, Huntington's. I'd written about brain injury, autism. I had yet to tackle anything that's categorized as mental illness. So I knew I wanted to go there next. And so the choices are depression, schizophrenia, bipolar disorder, anxiety disorders. And I had this feeling, I think a lot of people are familiar with depression, unipolar depression, and there's a lot written about that. There's not a lot of good material out there on bipolar disorder. And I had this suspicion that it's hiding in plain sight everywhere, meaning that millions of people are struggling with this, and there's so much shame and stigma attached to it that nobody's talking about it, which means that, that secrecy is such a burden, right? Because it does tend to breed more shame. And so I thought that would be a great topic. I started when I was on tour for Every Note Played. And the last question of most book events are, so what are you working on next? And I said, well, I think I'm going to write about bipolar disorder next. And the audience response was like nothing I had seen before. It was audible gasps, whispered conversation, and applause. And people were approaching me in the book signing lines, letting me know, already sharing stories of their brother, their daughter, their father, their spouse, offering emails, offering to help, thanking me for writing the story that I hadn't started yet. So I was like, okay, that's that's the right choice.
Yeah. Lisa, how did you find, if you found her, Maddie? What made you decide to tell the story from her point of view?
Yeah, I almost always choose the point of view of the person living with the disorder or the disease, because I think that conditions of the brain feel a little mysterious to the outsider, right? And they often get talked about from the point of view of a physician or a caregiver. And if you have something like if you have Alzheimer's or even bipolar disorder, doctors might talk to your loved one over you at times, like ask your mom how you're doing, or ask your spouse how you're doing, rather than asking you. So I do want to sort of respect and dignify the point of view of the person living with it. And I also want to put the reader right up against what it feels like to live with this. I want you to experience that. I chose a young woman. Maddie is 19, 20, and 21 in this story, because in doing the research for this book, I found out that the average age of onset for bipolar disorder is late teens, early 20s. So that informed my character from that.
Interesting.
I'm going to skip the next part of the question because Lisa just answered it.
Yeah. So one of the things that I really enjoyed about this book is that Maddie has a very supportive family. I mean, certainly they aren't always thrilled with her decisions, and for reasons that you can certainly understand if you're reading the book. And there are some consequences and there's some low moments, but ultimately they kind of stick by her. So did you ever consider writing this novel from a point of view of someone whose family abandoned her in this disorder? Because I'm sure, we all know instances where that's happened.
Yeah. So I think that there are moments of abandonment. There's moments of denial. There's moments of shame. There's moments of being too controlling and distrusting. And this book really is about Maddie's relationship with herself, her mom, her sister, her grandmother, her best friend from childhood, and a new friend. It's a very feminist point of view, sort of. I mean, I brought a lot of my own feminist points of view into the story. But I think that the family, she comes from a loving family. And I think that, so Maddie's father had bipolar disorder and it was undiagnosed. And Maddie didn't know this because he left when she was 4. But
but that was so good.
Yeah. So Maddie's older sister is 5 years older and she remembers more of what happened. And so the family wasn't able to support the father, Maddie's mom's first husband. No one was able to support him in the way that he needed, and he ultimately takes off, and they don't know if he's alive or dead. They don't know where he is. But Maddie is in a more stable family situation. So mom remarries, he's an older man, he's wealthy. So they come from a place of privilege. And so when she needs to be hospitalized, she is. And this isn't to say that it doesn't rock this family's world, and they don't know how to handle it well necessarily at first. But I think that part of the journey of this book is that everyone does figure out a way to support Maddie, even though she lets them down at times, and even though they don't choose the right way to react at times. They're getting there, and I leave the book in a positive place. And I do that on purpose with all of my books. I'm writing about really tough things, and there are dark things that can happen. And bipolar, like with Alzheimer's, Alice is facing, losing her access to all of her memories and not knowing who her family is and thinking that she doesn't want to be here when she doesn't know her address and her daughter's birthday. And so they face tough things. So Maddie's facing some tough things. But I am going to leave my characters in a place of hopefulness.
Yeah.
Yeah. Well, I'm always trying to tell the truth under the imagined circumstances. So I'm not Pollyannaing anything. This isn't rose-colored glasses. But where there's hope and it's realistic, I'm going to give that to my characters.
Yeah. And I appreciate that, because sometimes I do think when you're talking about these really difficult circumstances, like it can almost be too bleak. Like for the reader, it's like you almost can't even handle the bleakness of the situation. And that moment where, I hope this isn't a spoiler, but I don't. If it is, it's a very small one. But there's this very poignant moment where Maddie sees a woman on a park bench. She's kind of like talking to herself, and she's clearly probably homeless or adjacent to being homeless. And she has this really sobering moment of almost kind of like all the people who are trying to help me are trying to help me because they don't want me to be like this. Like, this is not where they want, the road to end for me. And I thought that was it was a really kind of standout moment for me in the book. And I liked that, you're right. You balanced it really well of like the highs and the lows and her having some consequences, but not being just abandoned on her own. I think it would have been just too much to take.
Yeah, and they don't approve. Like, the mother begs her not to go to Las Vegas. Mother doesn't want her to be pursuing comedy. Like, what? You're going to be in, basically nightclubs or bars where people are drinking and potentially doing drugs, and you're out late, and all of those things, like, not having regular sleep, and if you're taking any stimulants or depressants, like, none of that is good if you have bipolar disorder, because you can risk swinging either manic or depressive. And there's a lot of disagreement and fear around how do we handle this, and how do we keep you safe, and yet how do we let you live your life and trust you to make your own choices. And
it was interesting too, as like maybe like a sort of in between Maddie and her mother of like thinking about of like being able to really see Maddie's point of view of why she wants to do these things, but really understanding like this is why her mother doesn't want her to, because as a mother, the only thing you want is for like your kid to be safe. Like that's it. That's it. So it was really interesting to have kind of that push pull between the two of them. And honestly, one of the things I thought was really interesting is that it was almost like you didn't need a parent's point of view or a mother's point of view, because you kind of knew what her point of view was. So it was really interesting to kind of feel that from her, even though you weren't in her head.
Thank you.
Now, Lisa, we've heard you have an auspicious background in science, which you've woven into your career as a novelist pretty seamlessly. Has the sciencey stuff ever gotten in your way? Has it ever been a hindrance in your fiction career?
No. My science background is super helpful in doing the research.
I would think so.
So I used to do neuroscience research at Mass General Hospital in Boston, and that place feels like home to me. So, usually I begin there when I'm doing research. And if I need to talk to, in this case, it was psychiatrists and psychologists who research and treat bipolar disorder. Who's there? And it was Dr. Andy Nuremberg at the Bipolar Center. So I usually start in the medical community, and those doors are open to me because I have that background. I can understand any of the medical texts very quickly because I understand all of the vocabulary, and I understand how the brain works to the extent that we understand it at all. And it helps with people reaching out to people. So when I want to get to know people who have bipolar disorder and their loved ones, a lot of them know me as an author. And so they trust me because they've read my books and they understand what I'm up to, and they know my intention is good. Or they see my credentials. Oh, you have a PhD in neuroscience. That's helpful to know. Like, I'll talk to you. So it's been a help in terms of gathering the information I need to know to write these stories. And then, no, I'm not in my scientific brain when I'm writing the books. I'm never trying to sort of dump all of the data that I've learned. I'm not going to show you my research. I'm using it in service of story. But if it's like a good example is inside the O'Briens, my main character was a 21-year-old yoga teacher and a police officer, her father. And neither of them are going to know a lot about genetics and the neuroscience of Huntington's. So, and then same in this story, like Maddie isn't a psychiatrist. So the medical information has to come from the physicians and in those conversations in the books. And so I have to be careful. I'm not trying to get sciencey with you guys. I'm trying to tell you a really good story, and you're going to get the information. I'm more concerned with the lived, felt experience than the intellectual knowledge. But a lot of it's in there. The doctor's conversations in particular will give a lot of what are the medications? What can we expect from this? Why am I experiencing these side effects? Like, so those come in when Maddie ends up hospitalized.
I find it really interesting. So many of us from childhood on are taught and trained that you're a word person or you're a science person, right? Or you're a math and science person or you're a book person. So in your childhood, were you one or the other? And was there a surprise that you did all this great medical training and then decide to write fiction?
It was surprising to me that I became a novelist. I never planned to. I'm so glad I found it. I mean, I'm absolutely doing what I love and I think what I'm here to do. But no, I was very interested in science. I was very good at math and science. And that's unusual for a young woman in the 1980s. Like, that was not necessarily encouraged back then. There was no STEM for girls when I was growing up. But I loved that, and I was not intimidated by it. And but I also love to read. I was a reader. I wasn't a writer yet, but I loved to read, and I'm so glad that I've always been a reader, because that was how I discovered that I wanted to be a writer. Was like, when my grandmother had Alzheimer's and I read everything I could about it, everything was written from the perspective of a scientist, a clinician, a caregiver, a social worker, and they were all nonfiction books, and they were helpful to a point, but they lacked an answer to the question that I needed most, which was, what does it feel like to have this from my Nana's point of view? And how do I get to empathy? I feel so bad for her. I feel so heartbroken for her. But that's sympathy. Sympathy is when you feel for someone, right? And I was so uncomfortable around her Alzheimer's. I didn't really understand how she felt, and I didn't understand what was going on in her head. And I just didn't have the skills to feel with her. And that's empathy. I didn't know how to join her in her reality and feel what she was feeling. I was too uncomfortable. And fiction is the place where we have the chance to do that, right? Like, that's where we get the chance to walk in someone else's shoes and feel what they're feeling and explore empathy. And I knew this because I was a reader. And that was really how I made the leap. And then I just had this naive confidence that I could maybe do that. It came out. I did not plan this. Yeah.
Well, I was going to tell you that was still going on in the late 90s, because everyone used to tell me I should be a doctor. My first radiology internship was in 7th grade, and I thought I was going to major in biology in college. And then right before, switched to journalism. And so I did a lot of I got to kind of do some really cool stuff in the medical school at UNC when I was in college, like taking research and distilling it into something you would read in a magazine article. And it was so interesting. So I think about this, and I'm like, wow, what a fascinating, career to be able to take this and sort of distill it, for people who don't have any kind of background and really don't understand it. It's a really fascinating kind of combination of two worlds.
Yeah, thank you. I love it.
You were just talking about Still Alice, which I feel like probably everyone in the world has at least heard of.
Yeah.
And so I'm we've interviewed hundreds of authors on this show, and sometimes we hear from people that when they have, of course, all your books have been incredibly successful, but when they have something like that stays on the bestseller list for 59 weeks, that writing that next book can feel really difficult. It can feel like almost, of course, it's a magical, wonderful thing to happen to you, but also sometimes it can be a little bit panicking to have to figure out what to do next.
Yes.
So was it difficult to choose what you would write about after that book, or was everything kind of normal?
So, yes, to a few things. So I knew what I wanted to write next, and I'll talk about that. But I was scared because I didn't know if I could do it again. I thought, well, what if I'm a one-hit wonder? What if I only know how to write about Alzheimer's and I don't know how to write another book? And the expectation, because with Still Alice, nobody was watching. Nobody knew who I was as a writer, so I was just doing it. And now there would be this expectation, and then what if it was terrible? And I handle that kind of judgment and shame. But no, I knew that I wanted to write about someone with left side neglect or unilateral neglect next. there's a book called The Man Who Mistook His Wife for a Hat by Oliver Sacks. And I read it when I was 18 or 19 years old, Bates College. And each chapter, it's nonfiction, each chapter is a clinical vignette. It's about an interesting neurological patient. And there's a 3-page story in there about a man who's in a hospital bed, and every day he feels this cold, disembodied leg in his bed. And the only sense he can make of this leg is that a nurse has stolen a leg from the morgue and put it in his bed as a joke. And so he goes to throw the leg out of bed, and he falls out of bed because it's his left leg, and he doesn't recognize it as his because he has left side neglect. And that's basically it. That's the end of the story. And it had stuck with me and haunted me kind of since, because I was like, well, what happens to him? Does he go home? What, can you walk through a whole world if you're only aware of half of it? And how does that work? And I would, read little clinical vignettes here and there along the way, like over the years, but none of it was really satisfying. Again, it's like, what does it feel like to be him? So I knew I wanted to write about that next, but I actually signed a 2-book deal with Simon & Schuster after Still Alice, and I had no idea what that second book, my third book, would be. And that was nerve-wracking as well. But of course, eventually I figured it out. But yeah, it's scary to write your second book after the first one does well.
Yeah, no, I mean, I'm sure, but obviously you were not a one-hit wonder.
I pushed through. Yeah.
So it's good.
Sometimes that's all you can do is push through.
That's right.
Yeah, I mean, my mantra, it's still the same with every book. I'm scared every book that I start. I'm scared. And it's a familiar fear, but it's definitely a fear. And my journal writing before I begin the day is like, oh my God, like what, I don't know what happens. Like, I'm not sure. Like, what if this doesn't work? And then I talk myself down and I'd say, Lisa, you're not writing the whole book today. You're writing, 4 pages, or you're writing 1,000 words today. And you can delete the 1,000 words if they don't work, but you have to write something. What are you not going to write the book? Like, you're going to write the book, and you have to start that by writing what you're writing today. And all you're doing is writing what you're writing today. And then
so I love that even a brilliant neuroscientist has to convince her brain that this is all going to be okay. Because we talk about this all the time. It's like every time we're like, oh, I can never do that again. Where did that come from? Like,
and how did you do it? I know it does feel like, how did I do this? Because you don't do it all at once. It's too big for our brains to manage. Like, if you think, oh, I have to write a 350-page book, too much. It's too complicated, and I don't know how to to weave all of the information together, and how I'm going to make certain callbacks and tie it all together. Like, I can't conceive of all of that at once. And so I think that's where the panic and the fear comes from, is like, I don't know how I'm going to do it. I don't know. And it's relaxing into of course you don't know. Nobody knows when you start. Maybe mystery writers do. I don't know, but I don't. And that's the price of playing this poker game, is you sit down and you don't know and you begin.
Yeah. You have a team of pantsers on the screen here, so we know.
I have been paralyzed with fear. I'm writing a book that's kind of different for me right now. And
it's going to be so good.
I just have been overcome with paralysis and sitting down, I sat down, I came up to my office and I sat down and I said, by God, you were going to put some words on that piece of paper now.
Good. I know you have to get tough with yourself. I usually am like compassionate too. I'm like, I know it's hard. You're going to be okay. Like, I pep talk myself in. Like,
sometimes I'll go, okay, well, you can have some chocolate if you write 500 words.
Get the words down. Oh, they're going to be terrible. It's going to suck. Like, okay, write 1,000 sucky words. It's fine. Just do it anyway. And it's never bad. It's not never bad as I think. And it's always fixable. You can fix something. You can't fix nothing.
Well, that's true. And when I send my editor the first batch of pages, I always say, could you unsuck this, please? Usually, so far, she's come through for me. Now, I can only speak for myself here, but fiction touches me in a way that nonfiction doesn't. Although I love reading nonfiction, I think it's one thing to understand bipolar disorder in an abstract way, but it's quite another to live inside of it with Maddie. And I would imagine that you have changed many readers' lives. Do you have stories of reviews or feedback that have particularly stood out to you?
Yeah.
And it might be too early for Maddie. So for any of your
No,
books.
it's already happening for Maddie, and it could make me cry. It's because it's only been out just over a week, and I'm hearing from people who are loved ones of folks with bipolar disorder that are saying that they can't believe, they never thought they'd live to see the day when people were talking about bipolar disorder in public. Like a room full of people asking questions and sharing stories. I mean, the book really has already become this invitation and permission to talk about this unspeakable thing. And people who have bipolar who say that it's like reading what I've lived through. Like, I feel so seen. And thank you. Because I don't have a magic wand. We can't cure this. The treatments for this are wildly imperfect. But if I can help you feel validated in your experience through this story, like, that's why I wrote it. So it's so rewarding. I'm here. I welcome all of it. I'm getting, DM'd on Instagram and people are letting me know, and, posts on my, messages on my posts, comments, and, letting me know, how much the book already means to them. And it means a lot to me to hear that, for sure.
Such a great feeling.
Yeah. Okay. Well, Lisa, if you'd stick around, we have more to talk to you about. But first, just a couple quick reminders for our listeners and viewers out there.
Yeah, for all of you watching and listening, we encourage you to rush out and buy your copies of More or Less Maddie. And the perfect place to do that is the Friends and Fiction shop on bookshop.org. You'll not only be getting it at a discount, but all your purchases there support our show here and our guests and indie bookstores nationwide. And do not forget to visit friendsandfiction.com for details on our show schedule, upcoming in-person events, and we have some coming up, especially in March, and links to the award-winning Friends and Fiction official book club with Brenda and Lisa, our merch store, and our Substack newsletter sign-up.
Speaking of Substack, you can read all our free weekly posts on the Substack website or app and subscribe for free to get them directly in your inbox. And if you upgrade to our paid Substack, which costs just $5 a month, you'll have access to deeper dives with all our weekly show guests, plus monthly roundtable discussions like the amazing one we just did on writing tips, our own and those from guests we've had on the show. The four of us also host occasional private VIP Zooms exclusively for our paid subscribers. So if you enjoy tuning in for our weekly author interviews, this is a big way you can support us, basically for the cost of a cup of coffee. So check us out at friendsandfiction.substack.com.
Okay, back to you again, Lisa. Could you tell us where everybody watching and listening out there can find you online and on tour in the coming weeks? Now, we know right now you're in St. Louis.
Yes. I am. Yeah,
You think you are.
We think you are. We don't know.
I'm in St. Louis for a hot minute. And then I go to Minneapolis tomorrow, and then Columbus the next day, and then Florida after that. And then I go home for a minute and then I go back out. My website is lisagenova.com. You can find me on Instagram and Facebook at author Lisa Genova.
Perfect.
Well, Lisa, thank you so much for being here with us today and just talking about this amazing book and your incredible career. And we just can't wait to see. I hate to say this to people because it's like the baby was just born. When are you having the next one? But we can't wait to see what you come up with next because your books are so fascinating. And I feel like we learned so much from them in addition to being entertained. So thanks for being with us today. And we wish you lots of luck out on the road.
Yay. Thank you so much.
We loved having you. Now, everybody, be sure to tune in next week when Patti and Ron will welcome Victoria Christopher Murray to discuss her new novel, Harlem Rhapsody. That show will air on the Friends and Facebook page and YouTube channel on Wednesday, February 5th at 7 p.m. Eastern. And it will be published to our podcast for your listening pleasure on Friday, February 7th.
Thanks, everybody, for being with us. We'll see you next time.
Thank you for tuning in. You can join us every week on Facebook or YouTube, where our live show airs on Wednesday nights at 7 p.m. Eastern Time. Also, subscribe to our podcast and follow us on Instagram. We're so glad you're here.